The United States owes $37 trillion. That's $270,000 for every taxpayer. The interest alone costs $1.2 trillion annually, more than defense spending, more than Medicare, more than anything except Social Security. At current rates, debt service will consume 50% of federal revenue by 2030. Everyone knows this is unsustainable. The Congressional Budget Office knows it. The Treasury knows it. The Federal Reserve knows it. But they're not planning to pay it back through traditional means. They can't raise taxes enough. They can't cut spending enough. They can't grow the economy fast enough. Instead, they're planning something unprecedented in American history. A complete financial reset that will eliminate the debt, preserve government power, and transfer the cost to anyone holding dollars, bonds, or savings accounts. The plan is already in motion. The legal framework is being built. The technology is being deployed. The international coordination is happening. And 99% of Americans have no idea what's coming. This isn't theoretical. This isn't speculation. This is documented policy being implemented through executive orders, Federal Reserve operations, and congressional legislation. The evidence is public for anyone who knows where to look. Let me show you exactly how they plan to eliminate $37 trillion in debt without paying a penny. How they'll make it look legal, necessary, and beneficial. And why every dollar you own becomes worthless in their new system. Stage 1. Building the reset infrastructure. The financial reset began on March 9, 2022, when President Biden signed Executive Order 14,067, ensuring responsible development of digital assets. The order sounds like crypto regulation. It's actually the legal foundation for eliminating the dollar and replacing it with central bank digital currency. The executive order directs federal agencies to develop frameworks for a digital dollar that would support efficient and low-cost transactions while ensuring appropriate privacy protections. But buried in the language are mechanisms for unprecedented financial control. Section 4B requires the development of policy and regulatory approaches to digital assets that are consistent with United States priorities and economic competitiveness. This creates legal authority to ban competing currencies when the digital dollar launches. Section 4 directs agencies to assess the technological infrastructure for a digital dollar system that enables real-time or near real-time monitoring of transactions. This establishes surveillance capabilities that make every financial transaction visible to government. But the most important section is for B2, which requires evaluation of a digital dollar's effect on economic growth and financial stability. This language provides justification for using economic crisis to implement the digital dollar rapidly. The Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. While Executive Order 14,067 creates the framework for digital currency, Trump's return to office has activated the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve component of the reset plan. In January 2025, President Trump signed executive orders establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve modeled on the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The stated goal is purchasing 1 million Bitcoin over 5 years, positioned as ensuring American leadership in digital assets. But here's the real strategy. The federal government currently holds approximately 200,000 Bitcoins at $0.0 per Bitcoin dollars. But they're not planning to buy Bitcoin at market prices. They're planning to revalue it. The Strategic Bitcoin Reserve legislation includes provisions allowing the Treasury to value Bitcoin for strategic reserve purposes at prices determined by national security considerations rather than market prices. When they announce that Bitcoin is worth $1 million per coin for strategic reserve purposes, their 1 million Bitcoin becomes worth $1 trillion on the government balance sheet. They create $880 billion in value instantly just by changing the accounting price. The gold revaluation component. The gold component is even more straightforward. The US officially holds 8,133 tons of gold. Valued on government books at $42.22 per ounce, the statutory price set in 1973, at current market prices, around $2,000 per ounce, that gold is worth approximately $521 billion. But on Treasury books, it's valued at $11 billion. The reset plan calls for revaluing gold to $10,000 per ounce for strategic reserve purposes. This isn't market manipulation, it's accounting revaluation for government assets, perfectly legal under existing Treasury regulations. At $10,000 per ounce, US gold reserves become worth $2.6 trillion on government balance sheets. Combined with Bitcoin revaluation, the government creates over $3.6 trillion in asset value without purchasing anything new. This revaluation provides the mathematical foundation for debt elimination. When government assets increase by $3.6 trillion, the debt-to-asset ratio improves dramatically, creating justification for monetary reset. Stage 2. Manufacturing the crisis. The reset requires a crisis that justifies emergency measures. Financial resets are politically impossible during normal times, but become inevitable during emergencies. The crisis is being manufactured through deliberate policy choices that will trigger economic collapse. The inflation acceleration. Since 2020, the Federal Reserve has printed over $6 trillion to 40% of all dollars in existence. But most of this money remains in bank reserves and financial markets rather than circulating through the real economy. The reset plan requires this money to enter circulation simultaneously, creating inflation so severe that normal monetary policy becomes impossible. This is being achieved through three mechanisms. First, massive deficit spending forces the Fed to monetize debt directly. When Treasury auctions fail to attract sufficient buyers, the Fed creates money to purchase bonds. This injects new money into circulation through government spending. Second, financial system stress forces banks to reduce lending standards and increase credit creation. Bank failures and credit crunches paradoxically accelerate money creation as emergency lending facilities activate. Third, international dollar rejection accelerates domestic inflation as dollars return home from overseas markets. Countries reducing dollar reserves flood US markets with excess currency. The goal is 20 to 30% annual inflation maintained for 2 to 3 years. This level of inflation makes existing debt effectively worthless while justifying emergency measures to stabilize the currency. The banking system collapse. Regional banks are being systematically weakened through interest rate manipulation and regulatory pressure. Rising rates reduce bond values on bank balance sheets while deposit flight reduces their funding. Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and First Republic were test cases demonstrating that bank failures can be managed without systemic collapse while justifying expanded government intervention in banking. The planned banking crisis will consolidate the financial system into approximately 6 major banks that can be easily controlled during the reset. Community banks and credit unions will be eliminated or absorbed. When the crisis peaks, emergency banking measures will include deposit restrictions, bail-in procedures, and mandatory conversion to digital currency accounts. Traditional banking becomes impossible while digital currency provides the only viable alternative. The international dollar crisis. BRICS nations are developing alternatives to dollar-based trade, but this serves the reset agenda rather than threatening it. Dollar rejection by other countries forces dollars to return home, accelerating domestic inflation. The planned timeline involves 2024 to 2025, BRICS payment systems launch. 2025 to 2026, oil trades shift to alternative currencies. 2026 to 2027, dollar reserve status collapses. 2027 to 2028, digital dollar replaces traditional dollar internationally. International dollar rejection provides perfect justification for digital currency adoption. The government can claim they're protecting American financial sovereignty while actually implementing comprehensive financial surveillance. Stage 3. The digital dollar implementation. When crisis peaks, the digital dollar will be implemented as an emergency measure to stabilize the financial system. The implementation strategy makes resistance practically impossible. The technical infrastructure, digital dollar infrastructure, is being built through partnerships between the Federal Reserve, major banks, and technology companies. The system operates through blockchain technology that enables real-time transaction monitoring and programmable money features. Unlike Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, the digital dollar is centrally controlled. The Federal Reserve can create or destroy digital dollars instantly, monitor every transaction in real time, and program restrictions on how money can be spent. Each digital dollar contains metadata tracking its creation, ownership history, and spending restrictions. This enables unprecedented surveillance and control over economic activity. The infrastructure also includes automatic tax collection, where taxes are deducted from digital dollar accounts in real time rather than through annual filing. The transition strategy. The transition from traditional dollars to digital dollars will happen rapidly once crisis justifies implementation. The strategy involves 3 phases. Phase 1: Emergency launch. Digital dollars are introduced as pandemic-style economic relief during financial crisis. Everyone receives digital dollar accounts with stimulus payments, creating immediate adoption. Phase 2: Parallel operation. Digital and traditional dollars operate simultaneously for 12 to 18 months. Government payments, tax collection, and federal transactions shift to digital dollars, creating economic pressure for voluntary adoption. Phase 3: Complete transition. Traditional dollars are declared legacy currency and begin phase out. Exchange rates between traditional and digital dollars shift heavily toward digital, forcing conversion. The transition timeline is accelerated through crisis management. Each financial emergency justifies expanded digital dollar usage, while traditional banking faces increasing restrictions. The programmable features. Digital dollars include programmable features that don't exist in traditional currency. Expiration dates force spending rather than saving, stimulating economic activity while preventing wealth accumulation. Geographic restrictions limit where money can be spent, supporting local businesses and preventing capital flight. Category restrictions control what money can purchase, enabling social policy enforcement through monetary policy. Income-based features adjust purchasing power based on social credit scores, employment status, or compliance metrics. These features are introduced gradually and presented as consumer protections or economic stimulus measures rather than control mechanisms. Stage 4: The debt elimination mechanism. Once digital currency infrastructure is operational and adoption is complete, the debt elimination mechanism activates. This is the sophisticated part that makes the reset appear beneficial rather than confiscatory. The currency redesignation. The $37 trillion national debt is denominated in old dollars, Federal Reserve notes issued under the previous monetary system. When the digital dollar becomes the official U.S. currency, existing debt remains in the old monetary system. The government announces that old dollar-denominated debt will be serviced through a bridge mechanism that converts old dollar obligations to digital dollar payments at fair exchange rates determined by Treasury. A 10-year Treasury bond promising $1,000 in old dollars eventually pays $300 in digital dollars as equivalent value. The legal framework. The legal mechanism relies on the government's sovereign right to determine legal tender and monetary standards. Supreme Court precedent from the 1930s establishes that monetary revaluation doesn't constitute default when governments change monetary systems. The debt elimination becomes technically legal because the government continues making payments as scheduled. Payments are made in legal U.S. currency digital dollars. No explicit default or payment stoppage occurs. Provides no recourse for monetary policy changes. The international coordination. The reset requires international coordination to prevent capital flight and currency competition. This coordination is happening through multiple channels. The Bank for International Settlements coordinates central bank digital currency development across major economies. Most developed nations will implement digital currencies simultaneously. The International Monetary Fund provides technical assistance and policy coordination for monetary reset programs. IMF special drawing rights may become the bridge currency between old and new monetary systems. The World Economic Forum facilitates private sector coordination for digital currency infrastructure and adoption strategies. G20 nations have agreed to coordinate CBDC implementation to prevent competitive devaluations and ensure smooth transitions. This coordination ensures that Americans cannot escape the reset by moving money offshore. All major economies will implement similar systems simultaneously. Who wins and who loses? The financial reset creates clear winners and losers. But the distribution is carefully managed to minimize political resistance. The winners: government and financial institutions. The federal government eliminates $37 trillion in debt obligations without raising taxes or cutting spending. Interest payments that currently consume $1.2 trillion annually are reduced by 70 to 80% through currency transition. The government also gains unprecedented control over economic activity through programmable money and transaction surveillance. Tax collection becomes automated and tax avoidance becomes impossible. Major banks become infrastructure providers for the digital currency system, collecting fees for transactions, account management, and compliance services. Banking becomes a utility business with guaranteed profits. Technology companies providing digital currency infrastructure receive long-term government contracts worth hundreds of billions. The digital dollar system requires continuous updates, maintenance, and expansion. Asset managers like BlackRock and Vanguard benefit because their holdings of stocks, real estate, and commodities maintain value, while dollar-denominated assets lose purchasing power. The losers: savers and fixed income recipients, anyone holding cash, savings accounts, or bonds denominated in old dollars loses 60 to 80% of purchasing power through the currency transition. Retirees on fixed incomes face immediate impoverishment as Social Security, pension payments, and annuities lose real value. Government benefits are adjusted for new currency equivalency rather than actual purchasing power. Middle-class families with savings in banks, 401k accounts, or college funds see their wealth evaporate. These accounts contain old dollar assets that become worthless in the new system. Small businesses face compliance costs for digital currency systems while competing against corporations that can afford the infrastructure upgrades. But here's the sophisticated part: the losses are gradual and complicated, making it difficult for victims to understand what happened or organize resistance. The protection mechanisms for elites. Wealthy individuals and institutions are protected through advanced knowledge and alternative assets. Those with insider information have already moved wealth into physical assets, real estate, precious metals, commodities, and art maintain value regardless of currency changes. International assets, holdings in multiple currencies and countries provide protection against dollar reset. Productive assets, stocks, businesses, and income-producing investments adjust to new currency values automatically. Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and other decentralized digital assets may maintain value independent of government digital currencies. The timing of these wealth protection strategies indicates that the reset timeline and mechanisms are known by financial insiders who are positioning accordingly. The timeline, when it happens based on legislative schedules, Federal Reserve operations, and international coordination. The financial reset will likely occur between 2026 and 2028, 2024 to 2025, infrastructure phase. Strategic, Bitcoin, reserve operational CBDC pilot programs expanded. Banking system consolidation accelerated, international coordination finalized. 2025 to 2026, crisis phase. Inflation accelerates to 20 to 30% annually. Banking failures spread beyond regional institutions. International dollar rejection accelerates emergency economic measures justified 2026 to 2027 implementation phase. Digital dollar launched as emergency measure, traditional banking system replaced, currency transition begins. Debt redenomination starts 2027 to 2028 completion phase. Old dollars phased out completely, debt elimination finalized through currency conversion. New financial system stabilized, resistance movements suppressed. The timeline may accelerate if international events or domestic crises justify earlier implementation. War, pandemic, or financial collapse could trigger immediate reset activation. How to prepare for what's coming. Understanding the reset timeline provides opportunities to protect wealth and prepare for the new system, but options are limited and becoming more restricted. Asset protection strategies. Physical assets provide the best protection because they exist outside the monetary system. Real estate, precious metals, commodities, and collectibles maintain value regardless of currency changes. But asset protection requires acting before the crisis peaks. Once emergency measures begin, asset transfers become difficult or impossible. International diversification helps but becomes less effective as global coordination increases. Multiple countries implementing resets simultaneously reduces safe haven options. Cryptocurrency provides some protection but faces government suppression as digital currency implementation approaches. Only fully decentralized currencies may survive government crackdowns. Skill development. The most reliable protection is developing skills that create value regardless of economic conditions. Trade skill, manual expertise, and technical abilities provide income security when monetary systems change. Service-based skills that don't require large capital investments adapt more easily to new economic conditions. Then, businesses dependent on financing or inventory. Community networks. Local community relationships provide support during economic transitions. Mutual aid networks, local production, and barter systems operate outside monetary policy. But community building requires long-term commitment and geographic stability, making it difficult for mobile populations. Information and timing. The most important preparation is understanding the reset timeline and mechanisms. Those who recognize the signs early have more time to implement protection strategies. Monitor Federal Reserve policies, Treasury operations, and international monetary coordination for signs of acceleration or delay in implementation schedules. The point of no return. The financial reset represents a point of no return for American economic freedom. Once implemented, the system cannot be reversed without complete government collapse. Digital currency infrastructure creates permanent surveillance and control, capabilities that no government would voluntarily abandon. The debt elimination creates fiscal space that enables expanded government programs and control. International coordination makes isolated resistance impossible. That don't implement compatible systems face economic isolation and financial warfare. The reset also creates psychological acceptance of government financial control. Populations that become dependent on digital currency systems lose the knowledge and infrastructure necessary for monetary independence. Why this plan will succeed? The financial reset will succeed because it solves multiple problems simultaneously while appearing to benefit the public. It eliminates unsustainable debt without painful spending cuts or tax increases. It modernizes the financial system with improved convenience and security. It reduces inequality through programmable money that can redistribute wealth automatically. Most Americans will support the reset because it provides immediate benefits. Faster payments, lower fees, enhanced security, and economic stimulus through digital dollar distributions. The cost surveillance, control, and wealth confiscation are delayed, complicated, and attributed to other causes rather than monetary policy. Opposition will be limited and ineffective because alternative monetary systems will be. illegal and technically impossible to operate at scale. The financial reset represents the evolution of government power from taxation and regulation to direct control over economic activity through monetary system design. It's the most sophisticated wealth transfer in human history, disguised as technological progress and economic modernization. $37 trillion in debt will disappear. The government will survive and strengthen. And most Americans will never understand what happened to their wealth. The reset is coming. The only question is whether you'll be prepared when it arrives.